Welcome to the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 21 of The Rewind, a podcast devoted to the news, community discussion, and happenings around the development of Visionary Realms' upcoming MMORPG, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. I can't get into an intro, though, very long without welcoming my co-pilot, Theric. So with that said, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well, as always. I'm excited. We're at the end of summer, almost the start of fall, which is like my favorite time of the year. And like, there's so many good things about the fall, right? Like, it cools off a little bit. There's football on TV. And, I got to say it, people hate me, but pumpkin spice, right?
Oh, dude. I've already had about 4 or 5 Starbucks cold brew pumpkin things. Yeah.
Are so good. The scones they have at Starbucks, man. I'm like heavily addicted, and I hate myself for it because they're so like trendy and like hipster, but
I've been called basic. That's what people call me. I'm basic.
That's not that bad. I've been called worse, I think, but you can't deny it, man. Pumpkin spice is freaking delicious. So bring on the fall, man. That's what I say.
It's funny too, because my girlfriend doesn't like the pumpkin stuff, right? And I told her how good like the cold brew is because they do that pumpkin foam on the top of it. And the first sip, they sprinkle some of that stuff on the top and then the foam's there. The first sip is the greatest experience in existence. And after that first sip, it's not really there much anymore. Like that first sip is one time. And I've had so many people like, can I try that? Be like, hold on. You're not getting that first sip. No way.
I know it's the best. I agree.
All right. Well, I could talk about pumpkin all day, but let's not because we have a ton to talk about today. This rewind is probably going to go longer. There is just jam-packed with content and a lot of stuff to talk about. So let's not waste any more time and let's get rolling here.
Yeah.
This week in Visionary Realms news and notes. Okay, so VR news this week is pretty heavy. We have a dev stream we're going to talk about a little bit in a little different way. We're going to talk about a tweet from Joppa that got a ton of play and a great conversational piece, and a tweet from Kilson on the normal Pantheon MMO section that's actually pretty good too. So 3 really good discussion points. So let's jump first into the dev stream. So on Thursday, we got to see the new dev stream for Visionary Realms, and it gave us an idea of what the pre-alpha testers are going to be experiencing next weekend. Actually, before next rewind.
Right around the corner.
Right. They're going to be basically what they're going to see doing what they call the shakeout, like the PA5 shakeout. And it's really like this test that's there to sort of look at server load, get a bunch of people on at once that aren't as predictable as like their own team, see what happens, and make sure that whatever they need to fix when they do like the proper PA5 that has more classes and probably gonna be a bigger, more expansive test, that these little things can be out of the way. And it makes sense. I know we're all kind of wanting to see more and more detail in all the classes, but I think this is gonna be pretty helpful to making sure that when we do, it's gonna be a better experience. So I'm all for that. So.
Definitely.
So we're not going to cover like everything here because ultimately, like, go watch it. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen the dev stream, go watch it. It's like 37 minutes. It's pre-recorded, so it's pretty poignant in getting from point to point, and it's not like just sitting there. You're going to get to see in-game content, and you are going to see it in a new zone, which was like the region of Thronefast. And it is gray box. So if you haven't watched it yet and you didn't know that, it was an interesting kind of shocker to me. But here's some pieces. And Theric, if you want to jump in on any of these, please just jump in. But I just want to highlight some stuff that maybe you won't get just going to watch the video, because a lot of this was discussion in the chat or on Pantheon.Plus after with like Joppa and different people, that kind of a lot of clarity that came during or after the stream. So at the very beginning of it, you're going to catch a glimpse of the new gnome. As soon as Ronik logs in, he's going to start with a halfling and he's going to quickly change to a gnome and then like not stay on it very long. So right at the beginning of when he logs into the game, pretty close to the beginning of the stream, you're going to catch a glimpse of the new gnome model. And it's getting a lot of hype all across social media right now. It's on Twitter, it's on Reddit, it's on Discord. The pictures floating around everywhere. And there's a lot of people that they don't know what to expect or what to say about this. There's a lot of people who like the old model a lot more. So here's what I'm going to say. This is my take on it. We got to wait to see them with equipment on before we judge them, because if you look at like when they pick the human, for example, he's just in underwear. That's like the gnome in underwear, essentially, right? So it could be a very big difference when they put gear on. I don't know. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will be. But I think it is still fair to say I don't think anyone expected the gnomes to look like they do. So
yeah, it was sort of a shock to the system to see it, but I've sort of gotten over it. I didn't like it, but I think you're right. I mean, we got to wait until we see it with fully geared, because it was the glow that made the gnomes distinct, right? That inner glow, and with in the character creator like that, you didn't really see that. So I'll wait past judgment later.
Yeah. So it wasn't talked about much, even in after chat very much or during the stream, but they did show the new interface setup, and it did show a new little window that highlighted 10 different resistances with like little colored images and everything. They don't go into any detail on it, but check that out if you watch the stream. I think it's pretty interesting. And some of them you can pretty much tell like what the resistance is going to be by the picture, and some you can't. And keep in mind, those are, we talked about on Pantheon.Plus, those are completely different than like climates or acclamations. So
Right. Yeah.
At one point in the stream, people were concerned because, there's this constant, like you can climb almost anything, that's the big part of the climbing system. And Ronik bumped a wall he was walking past, and it looked like when we watched the stream that he couldn't climb it. And this became a pretty big point for the stream. Like, why couldn't he climb that wall, when he can climb other things? So as it turns out, he could have climbed the wall. Joppa clarified this extensively. And then when the video came back up on Pantheon.Plus, Joppa actually explained what was going on. And it makes a lot of sense to me. So he didn't approach it like fully straight on to climb it. And that's what you have to do to initiate climbing. And he kind of said that this is on purpose because you don't want to be like running through a hall and like clip a side of a wall at an angle, and then all of a sudden you start climbing it. And I think that that's actually like a good call, because that would really be annoying if you're just like magnetizing the walls constantly. So I do like that it has to sort of be purposeful to climb. And that does make sense on why he didn't like just climb that wall right away. So
yeah, I thought it was interesting because it's one of those design things that we would never think of as fans, as observers of the game, right? We would never think of this. And so when it didn't happen, people were, wow, it's not working properly. It's not working properly. But you don't know that. You don't know what they're designing, how they're designing it, because they've tested it. And so what Joppa said, yeah, you gotta go straight at it, and you gotta like it's done for a reason. So it was pretty interesting actually from a design perspective.
Yeah. Another part of climbing, Ronik jumps off of an area he climbs on, but, and this is great because Joppa made a comment on Pantheon.Plus. He said, even when Ronik's trying to die, he can't. Ronik tried to jump off the area he climbed up, but he actually landed on the platform right beside it. And then it's like, okay, well, he goes to fall off again, and he like somehow clipped a tree a little bit, landing on a branch before he hit the ground. So he never actually had a full fall. And some people said, well, it looks like fall damage isn't on, but Joppa did clarify fall damage is on, and the testers who do test will be able to take fall damage. Ronik messed up. So.
He's like a cartoon character, right? He never does what he intends to do. Or something else happens.
Like you couldn't plan it. He couldn't do that again if he tried. So there's also a lot of discussion around the intelligence of NPCs. I'm not going to go into this a lot because Joppa does spend a lot of time talking about this during the stream, and it's good conversation. But it's just the biggest thing about it was like, the flags that you're going to experience as a character, not even through the keeper or the perception system, are going to matter. And like when you're revisiting areas, NPCs will kind of evolve to you and talk to you differently. So it's kind of neat that like it gives you a reason to go back to towns. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know.
I'm very excited about that. I think that's huge. I really like that feature.
Yeah. Did you ever play Mass Effect?
I did. Mass Effect 2. Yeah. One, just a tiny bit.
I only played one, and the reason I never played any other because I spent so much time talking to my crew to like get my like reputation up with them. Like half the game was me talking to people and going down different conversation paths. So it is kind of exciting to be able to have these different interactions, even if it's not that in depth. It's pretty.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a good example. I know exactly what you mean. I did the same thing in 2. I really wanted to know how somebody else would react if I changed my relationship with somebody else, right? And did different things, made different decisions. So yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah. So it'd be kind of a neat way to do it. We saw faction on display.
Yes, we did.
So like you catch Joppa out of the corner of the screen. Pay attention when Ronik gets into the city, the little town. I don't want to call it a city. The little town of, what was it?
Avelia.
Avelia, yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of pay attention to the screen and don't focus so much on Ronick because Joppa sneaks into the corner and then just gets wrecked by a guard.
One shot.
It's so funny. And like the guard yells out. So check that out. That's pretty neat. But it kind of goes into the whole class and race are going to, influence your faction, which is, it's a neat little thing to see on display there. It's been a long time since we had a game that was really like that in depth about it. So
definitely.
So spells, they're not only going to be purchased, but they also perhaps may be bartered for. Now, this is a system they're testing. It is something that they look to sort of expand. It's not necessarily exactly how it's going to play out, but right now there's like rare drop essences that are dropping off enemies, and you can gather these essences just for the sake of testing, and you can use these essences to possibly barter for different abilities or spells. So just a different mechanic than just buying spells or learning spells. There's this barter mechanic they're looking to put in. But interestingly, this wasn't talked about on the stream, but if you didn't know this, it was talked about in the past, and we confirmed it on Pantheon.Plus was that like only 70 to 80% of your spells are going to be able to be like purchased or bartered for. The other 30 to 20%, depending on what class you are going to be spells that you have to discover, and they're going to be rare. People who have these rare spells are going to obviously have a little bit of an advantage just because they went out and seek out these quests or whatever it is to get them. So it's just kind of an interesting thing to hear that they're thinking of a bunch of different ways to get spells so it doesn't feel generic, and it keeps some excitement to getting them. And I'm a huge fan of all of that. So
yeah, me too. I agree too. It was really well. I'm glad that Joppa confirmed that when you brought that up on the show, that 30% of the spells you'd find in the world, and Joppa did confirm that was what they were looking at. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. Now, one of the ones that blew up recently on Discord and Reddit, and I think Twitter even, was the fact that there were levels. If you notice, like when they target NPCs, there's a level next to their nameplate. So this is a test, from what I understand. They don't want to say that that's going to go away, because there's a lot of people who kind of wanted more of an immersion feel, like with conning and red and all the different con levels. But I think conning's a little outdated because it's a silly button press for no reason when you're going to want to do it to everything. And then people are just going to macro it. So I'm not really against this. And I think they said that they're also looking to possibly have that bar, like also, show threat. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm not sure how it'll play out. But so that whole player bar, like a lot of what you see is testing. So don't assume anything is finalized. But what you see is directions they want to head in. And if it works, they want to keep it. So
that's interesting. I didn't know that. If I had a vote, I would keep the conning system, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah,
I don't know how many times you have to replace your C key on your keyboard.
Just something, maybe some other way of doing it. I think it just adds a feeling of, I don't know, a realism aspect to it, I guess.
Yeah. Like when you're outside in real life and you say, hey, what are you all about? And you squint your eyes when you look at them. Oh, they look like they're ready to attack.
The mailman is aggro towards me.
They're way stronger than me. Yeah. I get an immersion right there.
Immersion, that's right.
There was no group window. This was asked about 700 times during the stream and also during Pantheon.Plus.
Right.
So Joppa answered a bunch of times. So when they recorded the stream and they're grouped up together fighting, they had said that the group window, they had taken it down in the test build that they were using to do a couple of changes and fixes, just some quality of life stuff that they wanted to fix in it. And that's done already, but it wasn't there when they were recording. It just happened to be that way. So the only reason you don't see a group window is because of that. So when you're watching them fight, that's why you don't see that. And then the last one that was actually probably the biggest thing for me is the sound. So if you watch it, it's going to feel a little weird because there's no music, there's no sound effects. And that really caught me off guard. And I think it was something that maybe made it from being an amazing stream to kind of just like a good stream, which isn't a bad thing. But like that sound, like Joppa's always talked about the fact that, combat is a mixture of animation, the abilities working well, and the sound effects. So without the sound effects, I think it took away a lot of like the engagements with the enemies that Ronick was killing, even though he was only auto attacking. I do think it's still played into making the combat not feel as exciting. Now, the reason that is because apparently Ronick wasn't recording his sound. so
oh, of course.
Yeah, so it wasn't planned, and Joppa laughed and said he didn't even know until the stream came on that it was quiet like that. So to me that's good, because that means any of the testers who get to go in there, you're going to have sound at some level of sound. So that's good. So that's kind of just little tidbits, a little different way to look at the stream. It's something that if you hear that and then you go back and look, these are little things you can look for, but there's a lot more to experience. Theric, was there anything I missed that we should have covered there?
No, I don't think so. I think you hit all the high points. We did a lot of the stuff on the show last night. I just want to do a quick sort of like just overall reflection, because I had some interesting thoughts about this morning, just looking back on the stream as a whole. And this morning when I sort of started thinking about it, I thought, this was a good stream for people like us who are hardcore followers of the game and know what we're looking at and knew sort of what this was going to be. But I felt like, there might be some public perception fallout from the way that this stream was for the casual observers for the game, because they didn't clearly state, right in the front end that this is a testing gray box environment. And I think that, when I went and I rewatched the stream today, and I came away feeling like, yes, that may be true, but it wasn't the most important takeaway from the stream, because of some of the things that showed up, were very important to the foundations of the game. And I think you hit on some of them there, and the animations look very clean, right? We saw some of the updates from the combat synchronization streams that we've seen before. We saw that in action. The UI was very clean and had some new functionality, like the stats tabs in the sort of middle of the frame. And, we came to understand sort of how they're embracing that open world approach right from the start. So, by the second time I watched it, I really got a better understanding that what we saw was subtle but significant. And I really would strongly encourage everybody out there, maybe if you didn't have a good impression, or if you came away thinking like, that's sort of a letdown, go back and watch it a second time, because I think it'll change your mind. I think when you look at it a second time, it gives you a lot more insight into what you were seeing. So I wanted to say that.
No, it's a great bring up. And again, the image that was put out for the stream was this brand new screenshot in game of the island of Infinite Storm. And it was beautiful. And it was like, whoa, okay, that, you relate that to Fairthale because we've seen it in Fairthale. And it was this upgraded graphics. So I don't think anybody was really prepared to go into a gray box testing environment, especially in an area that we haven't even heard about or knew was in the works, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting, because I think had we known it, it would have been a completely different experience. I think that a lot of the first watch of this video was kind of like curiosity and shock, and it stops you from really digesting it. Kind of like you said. So when you watch it the second time, you know what you're getting. Now you're going into the details more and the nitty gritty and the cool things. So I agree.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of the comments, subsequent comments, and I'm really happily surprised, because I think the Pantheon community is educated enough, and what I've seen have been positive, right? People are saying, yes, we get what this was. We understand what it is. So some of my fears, I guess, were allayed a little bit in seeing those comments. So yeah.
All right. Well, again, you go watch it, check it out. We're not here to replace that. You should go see it. Just listening about it or watching Pantheon.Plus is fine, and we love you here. But go check it out, because that's where it's important. Check it out on their YouTube page. They put that up. So let's jump into what we normally talk about, is Twitter. And after a few weeks of repeats, Kilson gave us a really good one. He said, "What will make Pantheon compelling versus just a grind?" This is a really good topic. So I'm going to read through some of the community members and what they said, and then we'll get into Theric and myself talking a little bit about this. So Valhalla says, a mini event or raid bosses throughout the leveling process. Not only will it help people learn the intricacies of how to work together, but to keep them excited while leveling. Also will help them get gear another way. And it says, in his opinion, of course. Tristan Tenu, I can never say this. I think I've said his name different every time. He says, players. Killing stuff by myself will feel very grindy real quick. Killing stuff with others while having a laugh over Discord will make it a pleasant experience. That's actually a really, very, very good point.
Excellent point.
Yeah, whenever you're doing something that's tedious, if you have something slightly to distract you, that tedium goes down quite a bit. So
yeah, definitely.
Disposalist says, don't make the game hyper-focused on, and I love this because I debated him on this a bit, but he says, don't make the game hyper-focused on sweaty, high-paced combat, progression, and wannabe pro min-maxer uber guild players at the expense of your fun-loving, social, casual majority. Having lots of horizontal progression, making it a world to live in, not just a game to beat. So I love the last line, make it a world to live in, not just a game to beat. Not going to get into it because we have so much today, but at some point I would love to have a discussion with you, Theric, about this, what I'm going to call, and I'm going to get so beat up for this hypothetical thing called horizontal progression. I want to talk about that someday because I think it's one of those phrases that's used without people really knowing what they're talking about. Not everybody, and I'm not saying Disposalist doesn't, but I see it a lot. And then, by the way, I am one of those min-maxers, and I'm not sweaty. So I just want to say that.
You're a chilly min-maxer.
Yeah, I'm a nicely temperatured min-maxer.
Well, I saw you and Disposalist had a really long debate conversation on Discord about this, and I was just enthralled, like reading it. You guys, like, the Disposalist can talk almost as much as you can. I think he's a good challenge for you. He's like a match for you. So we should definitely bookmark it though as a conversation to have at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And it was good. It was all in fun, love, and me and Disposalist had a good little debate. But that's what discussion is. And at the end, you shake hands and you walk away, and it is pretty good. Yeah. So my guy here, I'm going to start calling him my guy, Furious Pierre. He says, accomplishment in a variety of forms, zone boss, quick quests, meaningful achievements, cool skills. Also, don't dynamically scale everything. Let us feel the power we've gained. That end phrase in every game I play that has leveling is so important. It is okay for us to get powerful. Let us get powerful, right?
Yeah. I don't know why they're afraid to let us do that. Why do you have to scale everything? Like, why keep us in a perpetual state of, mediocrity? Yeah.
And that also ties into the horizontal progression thing, but we'll talk about that another time. Scott says, which is M Sanderson D, says, complicated question. In a perfect world, decouple the player's primary goal from their character's level. Interesting, really interesting, profound, short statement.
Yeah. Big design idea.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's tough, but it's interesting. Rebecca S says, lore. You like that one. Lore,
I like Rebecca already.
Class stories, interesting quest lines. That all adds up. A reason to keep going back to areas. One thing I liked in EQ2 is shiny collections. It gives you a reason to go to a place to get a reward, even if it's a decoration item to hand in. Decorating items are a big hit. Rebecca, you're going down the path that I like to talk about. The words we are not allowed to say, but I like.
But I don't disagree with her. I mean, I'm sort of like talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit with this one, but doing those shiny collections is it's got its hooks, Yeah,
it's just something to do. It doesn't need to be the most groundbreaking thing in the world. To just sometimes get away from the grind, because that's what we're talking about, right?
Exactly.
Gast says grinding a raid boss for hours on end is great when you do it with your guildmates, while the same thing is tedious and irritating with a pug group. Tight communities within your game will make or break it. It's very similar to what someone said earlier. About like it's who you're with and having the ability to be with those people.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna say that pug groups it's not a dirty word. It's not a weakness. Pug groups can be great. We have to be ready to accept that.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it before. Like, the reason pug groups usually don't work is because you join one that's not your. It doesn't fit within your gameplay experience. Like, that's your fault. Like make your own group.
Yeah, be a group leader. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Janik says knowing what it is. Being an MMO is fine. Being an MMO, a mobile game, a breakfast. I love that. Breakfast. Being an MMO, a mobile game, and breakfast is spreading yourself thin. Too many games try to be too much. I completely agree. That's what's killed the MMO genre. I've said that a bunch of times. I think when MMO RPGs, and you notice people call it MMO now, that's another problem I have. MMO and MMORPG is not the same thing. MMORPGs lost a lot of their flavor and desire when they tried to put everything in, like sim and like survival's the new thing. Oh, I hate it.
I agree.
All right, ready for this one? Habek Badako.
Good. Wow, nice.
Bacado. Yeah, I didn't get that even close. I think what most games lack right now are making players feel like they are part of the world. So many games seem designed to rush to the end game versus really providing a rewarding experience while leveling. I'm really hoping that Pantheon gives me that feeling. I think that's a pretty widespread sentiment.
Just the journey, right? We just want the journey back. We don't want the end game to be the goal. We want the journey.
Yeah. Rykoth says engagement in story. If quests spin a good yarn and provide decent rewards, I'll be easily invested. Whispering Crows, real simple, says an immersive adventure. You know, I had to put that one in.
Yeah, it's got that word.
That's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to say it. Leave it at that. Jorgen Wickstrom, who's been on here, featured quite a few times, says an MMO contains grind. It is the nature of the beast. Stay true to your concept that a 2-hour session will be meaningful and will be fine. If you give us more options, zone, venue, the grind will feel less repetitive. No golden path to max level.
I like what he said about the 2-hour session. We're going to talk about that a bit later too. So it's a good point.
Look at that. And that wasn't even planned. Strieg says the devs can mix things up and try to keep things fresh. This helps, but from my experience over the years, it's mostly up to us as individuals. What is fun and exciting experience for one can be a long, boring grind for another. Go in with a positive attitude for your best odds. Oh, I love that. I've said that so much. Every MMORPG has fans. Why is that? They can't all suck. It's because people have found a way to enjoy the good parts of them. It's simple.
Yeah, no, it's true. Attitude, man. It's all about attitude.
All right. So that's the end of the responses I'm going to read from Twitter. So now I'm going to go on my small little rant here. So there's so much to say about this topic. First, the word grind is not a bad word. It's funny you brought that up about bugs. A grind can be good. A grind can be a strong effort for a great result. And that's where I'm heading here with this one. So for example, if you're an athlete and you grind it out at practice, it's the payoff of a great game. If you grind out studying for a test, for example, the payoff is, grade again, good grade. Then grinding on itself is fine, but the reward has to be worth the grind. Grinding days, weeks, years for something mediocre feels horrible. The grind should be balanced to the reward and the rarity of the reward. The carrot, which I think is one of the most important parts of designing an MMORPG, needs to be constantly on your mind. So that no matter what you're grinding, you're motivated to keep it up for the moment that you quote unquote win and achieve your goal that was set out. Like think about J-Boots, for example. Some people were luckier than others, but I camped that thing for 72 hours and I think we got 4 of the rings, right? To get 4 pairs of boots. That's 3 straight days in which we sat in the same spot with a sleep rotation in order to get these items we desired. It's one of the best stories I've ever had in an MMORPG. And in the moment, it was a freaking grind. After about 15 hours, we hadn't gotten even one yet. And we were just going to give up. But then, you kind of had that in your head that like, oh, well, we haven't got it yet. It's got to be the next one. It's got to be the next one. It's got to be, for however long that took. But we just kept fighting. We eventually got 4 different characters the AC ring. The grind was hard. It was frustrating, but the reward was worth it. And the story will live on forever. There has to be an understanding of rarity, time commitment, and the value of the reward. If those things are balanced, which is no easy task, don't get me wrong, then the term grind becomes a good one. I think people are too set on leveling as the grind. Like grinding, leveling is like a constant reward of strength, ability, content, etc. Leveling's not a grind. It's how you choose to level. That's what a grind is, right? So like overall, like a grind, the term, and in MMORPGs, as somebody said, it needs to be present, but it needs to be balanced with, again, reward and payoff. So again, long rant. I'm going to stop there. Derek, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I'll keep it short, but I think what Tristan Tayanu, he absolutely nailed it. It's the group aspect 100%. And what you were talking about with J-Boots, I don't think that would have been as doable if you had been just by yourself the whole time. Like you said, you took shifts and like you probably had guildies and group members coming in and out and talking and socializing. There's always going to be things or tasks you need to do that take time or some repetition, and they get labeled as a grind in a negative way when you're bored out of your tree and you're just slogging through the task. But when you've got a group to help with this, or you've just got socialization, it becomes so much better. It actually goes from being a negative to a positive, because if the task is mundane, you get people talking to each other, joking around, just trying to find the fun instead of focusing on the actual task. I'll give you a quick example. I was playing Final Fantasy 14 before we were recording tonight, and I'm in the early levels, like level 15-ish or whatever. And, it's that grind in that game. isn't that enjoyable, because I was looking at chat. I'm like, well, I can run around, do these fetch quests and whatever, and just grind away. But maybe I can look in chat and people are talking and I can sort of talk about whatever. But there was nobody talking. It was just quiet. And maybe, you know, I know it's not a new game, but there was people playing it. Like, it's got a population. And I think if there had been people talking, or I'd been maybe in a group doing what I was doing, I would have been totally fine. But the grind was getting to me. So I think it's about context.
It's a really good point, actually. Well, good topic. Curious to hear what you guys think, who are listening. You know, throw your comments in either the chat during the live premiere, or throw them in the comments on YouTube, because I'm very curious about what you guys think about grind. I really want to hear from the community on that. Definitely. So the next piece here, and it's great because you're like, hey, we have to have this. And I was like, don't worry, we have it. So
I knew you would.
Yeah, Joppa put out on Twitter, just via his own, handle, he said, the first 30 minutes on your first character of a brand new MMORPG, what makes it and what breaks it? Great question. And this, again, we've talked about this a few times, the onboarding piece and how important that is. So really good topic. And it was really fun to read through these responses. So let's get to it. Grim Hopeful said, a fluid and clear direction so you don't run around staring at walls and talking to robots. Nathan Napalm says, I want to have some freedom. I want to feel lost amidst the living world. I should feel compelled to learn more about everything around me and have a feeling of unlimited possibilities. Tutorials should have the option to be skipped also, LOL. Drakatak says, does what I did in character creation translate to the world? Does my character move, respond, and attack how I think it should? And his point here is an interesting one, because I was shocked as we read through these, and I went through a ton of responses. This was a pretty popular post, and I was shocked at how much the responsiveness of your character was very prevalent. So we're going to hear a lot about that, and Drak kind of started that off.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Mike Brown says, give me a story to get involved with. There does need to be a tutorial, but it should be skippable. I need to see NPCs, living mobs, and moving. Spiders attacking bixies, spiders attacking orcs, living world. Good story. Show me how to Pantheon. I like
nice,
that.
Nice.
Toadman Bear says, loneliness breaks it immediately. In a game like Pantheon, forced on grouping and social focused, because we don't want to use the word forced, focused on grouping and social interactions, it would be so awesome if right in the beginning of the game helps new players connect. Tricky, but yeah.
I agree with that. Actually, just to tag on that, Joppa said last night in the chat that this topic came up, how soon are we going to be encouraged to group? And he said around level 4 to 5, I think is what he said. That's when we're going to start getting that group encouragement. Yeah,
which is good, because that means that, you're going to have to start making some friends.
Better. That's right.
Friend of mine, great video maker. He's really into ARPGs. He goes by the name Vulcan ARPG on Twitter. He says, intuitive interface and an introduction to the world. So many games miss introducing the universe that he just doesn't become invested, he says.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mal says, as long as it feels like I'm in a living, breathing virtual world with character and history, I'm hooked. I know you agree with that one.
Definitely, yeah.
Basgrim says, there needs to be things that are intriguing but not entirely obvious. I like that the game shows me what tools I have and what the goals are, but not exactly how to relate them together. In a game, if a game doesn't make me think, it's not going to keep my attention for long. Pretty good one.
Yeah.
Libwick says, first thing I'm going to do is tour my home city, get a flavor for my home race and its story, and then start making my way into chapter 1 of it. We talked about that, right? I think I just kind of went on a rant. And I'm like, what's wrong with just running around your city on day one? Getting lost in it. And I like that he does like that. So.
Well, this is your home, right? If you were given a new house, what was the first thing you would do? You'd walk around, you'd spend the whole day just getting to know your house, right? It makes sense.
Stone to the Bone says, I won't know till then, but in general, do I feel like I've entered a world worth exploring? That's a good point too.
Exploring, yeah. There's so many worlds that aren't worth exploring out there right now, it feels like.
DM Harms says, makes it feels like home, wondrous and personal, places that naturally draw attention and natural gameplay from that. What breaks it? A generic world where a chaotic cacophony, he used the word cacophony, almost got me, but I got it, of jumbled player names and bunny hop around. Here we go. Not appearing to do anything meaningful, immediate, excessive UI. So
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of things that break it, but I don't think he's wrong necessarily.
Always with the bunnies. What people, MMORPG fans hate bunnies.
Yeah. They do.
It's like of all animals, like bunnies are cute. Why do people hate bunnies?
Well, they like to kill bunnies. I don't think they like to wear.
You know what it is?
Bunnies.
No bunny ever gives experience. Bunnies are just there and you kill it with one shot. I think that's why people don't like bunnies, because they don't get the XP for killing them.
Yeah, no loot, no nothing.
No loot, nothing. Yeah. Nano says movement and camera. So this is another really good point here. He said he tried Guild Wars 2 again recently and couldn't get into the movement and camera to work the way he wanted to, which he says is how sort of like WoW does it. And he found it completely disorienting. Immediately logged off and uninstalled again. Second, he said would probably be a bloated UI. So
you know what? With Guild Wars 2, man, I like back when I played it the first time, I played it for a long time. And I've tried to go back to it 3 times and I've done exactly what Nano said. I've installed it, loaded in, got in, uninstalled immediately. You know, a lot of the things that he says there are so true. The bloated UI, just the way it sort of does its thing, you know, like what Destrin said about the chaotic cacophony of jumbled player names. Man, that is Guild Wars 2 to a T.
Yeah, it definitely is. Jeremy Hamilton says too much dialogue driven quests in a starter area can be quite a sour spot. I think you should enter combat within the first 5 to 10 minutes of creating a character. 5 if you're not reading quests, 10 if you are. Thorsten says immersion.
Immersion alert?
Immersion alert. If it's too epic, I'm pulling out, which is crazy. And I get it. Like a lot of people say that in the Pantheon community. I want to start as a nobody and I want to build my way up to greatness. All those MMOs that start with some crazy sequence takes me out real quick. WoW Classic, Black Desert, Age of Conan, they do this extremely well. AOC has the best 1 to 20 ever. So interesting.
Yep.
BN Chilogen. I like that. Character customization. I miss looking totally different than others. I mean, you know, I love character creation.
Gotta be me.
Prismatic Dave, formerly known as Surfer Dave, but still somehow known as Surfer Dave, but he's Prismatic Dave. If the first thing I see is a quest telling me that I am the hero, then I'm out. That's what he says. So
yeah. Well, he's been playing some Fortnite lately. I think he's been streaming some Fortnite there. Yeah. And you are not the hero in Fortnite. You are one of many about to be killed.
You're a target. Yeah. At 187, who's a big time Pantheon fan, really encyclopedia of the game. I'll tell you that.
Been around forever. Yeah.
Yeah. He says the abominable rail monster is the most terrifying thing to me as a player that any monster or demon could ever be to my characters. I want access to an open free world. I do not want to engage in a curated hamster wheel tutorial.
I like that way of putting it.
Yeah. Meeks says control and interface need to be intuitive. Combat physics must feel natural and weighty, but more than anything, the social aspect needs to be there. It is easy to find others to group with, or is it? I'm sorry. Is it easy to find others to group with? Are people talking to each other? Too often I find myself soloing and bored. Alric says, mainly for the first 30 minutes, I just want to see how well the game runs. If it's not running well, I tend to lose interest. That's a really big point right there that wasn't commonly said, and it's pretty important.
Yeah, we don't usually think about stuff like that, right? We're always thinking game things, but I mean, if it doesn't run, it doesn't run, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I didn't play Vanguard.
That's a lot of people have the same reason. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And one of my biggest regrets, but that's what pushed me away. Yeah. Vograx says difficulty. If the game is so easy that I can auto attack everything to death, then I'm out. Most MMORPGs these days are stupidly easy and require minimum player input. Group content. If the entire game can be soloed, then I'll just go play Skyrim. MMO should be about teaming up.
Vograx has got it.
Yep. Couple more. Alex Jenks says, on top of good mechanics, I really love being shown that the world is dangerous. High level of danger mixed with newbie content. It's easy enough to avoid, at least. It's such a sharp hook. It gives a tangible goal of, I will come back and conquer this later. That is an awesome point. Awesome. Like when you're killing a couple spiders and you're all good and you go around a corner and there's an enemy there, like, and you run away. Like I'm going there some other time. I love that.
But vengeance is in your mind. You've written it down. You're coming back 5-10 levels later, getting your vengeance.
I know you didn't play WoW, but do you know of the history of Hogger? Or have you heard all the memes of Hogger?
I only know it through Hearthstone, but
yeah. So the whole thing with Hogger was he was just like an elite mob. He was like the first elite mob that you had to kill for a quest. And you're going around, you're killing everything fairly simple. And he's like your level, right? And then he goes up and just wrecks you. And he would walk around the area where you were hunting for quests and just jump you and kill you. So it was just always this joke. Like anytime a new character was created, someone would be like forming raid for Hogger. You're like level 10. So
that's
maybe
awesome,
8.
though.
And it lives on. Thing. Yeah, and it lived on to even like in Hearthstone. Like Hogger is like this big thing, but that's a perfect example of what he's saying. And the last one from one of the community members here is progression speed. If I can hit level 5 in the first 30 to 60 minutes of the gameplay, odds are likely that the game will feel too trivial to be worth the time. Agree and disagree. I think there has to be like a little kind of like rev up. And I don't always think that like the first 5 levels being easy really dictates what the rest are going to be like. But I understand what he's trying to say a little bit better. Twitter, you can't put huge thoughts out there, but yeah. So.
Yeah. I think I understand what you say, but I know what you mean too. It's like, it's got to be, it can't take 2 weeks to get to level 2,
Yeah, because you're going to be bored on your mind. It's like it's completely reverse of what you want. So let's see here. So my response was, I just said, I would very simply say, allow me to take everything in. A lot of MMORPGs fill the screen with pop-ups, directions, and take you away from really absorbing the world when you first step in, and instead start to like lead you with interface pop-ups like junk mail. We kind of talked about that before. Let us feel Terminus. Let us touch the soil. Let us, be there. I would love if you started the game with no interface. And like, as you started to discover things, the interface things popped up after a few minutes. It doesn't have to be long, but just so that your first step in, there's nothing on the screen but you, your character in the world, would be really cool.
Oh man, I love that idea so much. I love that idea and the way you sort of said it. I'm big into meditation. Like I'm very much about, being in the moment. Like we live so fast sometimes and we get distracted. And I think what you said about interface and pop-ups, that was one of the things that breaks it in my response here was advertising, notifications, daily reminders. All these things take you out of the moment and take you out of what you're actually experiencing at that time. So, and what makes it for me is being lured to explore a very dangerous and interesting world with your friends through subtle environmental design, right? So if I'm looking at the world, one of the quotes that Joppa has said, and it always sticks with me and I always remember it, is what his inspiration for the perception system was. He was doing a quest and he went into this beautiful sort of like dome, building, and he was looking around, but that's not what he was supposed to be doing for the quest. He was just supposed to be finding the person with the arrow over their head instead of noticing the environment, right? And it was like, you're wasting all that. So that's what I'm talking about. And I think I love that idea that you said, man, just your first log in, there's no UI. How cool would that be? And then it just sort of fades in, one piece fades in, another piece fades in to sort of help you along, right?
Be awesome. It'd be awesome. It doesn't have to be super long because I know people want to be able to skip tutorials, but just give that first moment that feeling of I'm here. I think that'd be awesome. Definitely. Well, we just went 42 minutes in segment 1. Buckle up, everybody. This is going to be a long one. No, we did trim down a lot of the other segments, but lots of news from VR. We can't skip that, right? Like,
I hope you guys have had your pumpkin spice lattes because we're going to be here a while.
All right, well, that's it for VR news and notes. Lots this week, but let's move on. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into social media and see what the discussion is all about.
Okay, so our main discussion this week comes to us from the official forums at Pantheon.MMO.com from community member Strieg, and he was actually in the Twitter responses as well. And his title of his post is "Children of EQ are the old guys of Pantheon." And before I get into it, I actually want to do a little editing of the title on my own because we can't forget the old girls of Pantheon too. So shout out to them. Now, on one of the things we hear in the Pantheon community a lot is that Pantheon's going to struggle because the target audience no longer leads a lifestyle that really allows them to commit the hours to an MMO like they're used to, like you were talking about the J-Boots camp. And whether that's EQ, WoW, or any of the more traditional games. And the idea basically that Strieg is talking about, he's challenging that. And here's what he said in his post. He said, over the last few years, popping in and out of these forums, I've continued to see posts of people saying they aren't kids anymore, so they don't have all that spare time to play. It's an argument I struggle to understand, as many of us played EQ back in the day without tons of free time. The only thing I can think of is that back then, they were pushing for server firsts or trying to stay ahead of the crowd. Are they concerned with that now in a game like Pantheon that they'll be lagging behind and they don't find that acceptable? Or do they actually think a game like EQ can't be played with more limited time? Will they be able to accept playing behind the top players because they don't have that much time now? And I'm really interested to hear what this generation says, see if they've given any thought as to how they'd feel about this. So basically what Streak's hypothesis is here is that the time requirement EQ was only relevant if you valued sort of being like, frontline, ahead of the curve, experiencing content, getting server first, that kind of thing. He's believing that if you're not into that play style, the whole assumption about needing this time commitment is basically incorrect. And there's no need to account for it in Pantheon's design. So, is that accurate? We'll see. Let's hear what the community had to say. So Disposalist, who we mentioned earlier as well, said, I think the kind of people that are always pushing for server firsts and rating dominance as the ones that are missing the best of these games. They may well not be able to dedicate as much time as they feel is necessary to do what they used to do. Having said that, whilst I appreciate VR's efforts to make sure everyone can feel they can have meaningful progress in like a 2-3 hour session, I would not be against there being content that requires, or at least rewards, greater endurance and commitment. If VR manages to make Pantheon greatly challenging and split up into short sessions, then great. But I wouldn't want them to degrade the level of challenge and the varieties and types of challenge just to enable those that feel they must achieve the pinnacle of Pantheon to do so in limited time.
I think I just discovered another Pantheon.Plus U episode. I want to talk about this word challenge.
Sure. That'd be a good one.
There's so many ways to go. I'm not going to get into it here, but the way he brought that up and like what he sees challenge as, I think it's a good topic, but go ahead. Let's keep going on here.
Yeah. Well, hey, get Disposalist on. We got to get him on the show. That'd be great.
There you go.
Questar said, I was middle-aged when EQ came out. I played EQ steady for 10 years, but never for more than 2 or 3 hours at a time. As such, I probably only saw 75% of the game, and it was enough. I had so much fun. Family and work came first. Big Dog Chris said, I didn't disagree with Brad on his philosophy for Pantheon, but you are right about this. And this is something where I strayed from Brad. He would say that people who played EQ are grown up now and don't have time to play like they used to. Sure, EQ was 20 years ago, but who's to say that only people that played EQ at 15 are going to play Pantheon? Are there not 15-year-olds today that would play like we did back then? What if people who played EQ were 45 and are now 65 now? So maybe they have more time to play than they did 20 years ago. Like he's just saying there's a lot of factors that go into how much play time you have or you want to have. Another person said, if anything, we have more comfort and easiness than we did in 1999/2000. And I'm pretty sure everyone can schedule their time better. I think that's a really important point.
I think I completely disagree. Like,
really?
Yeah, our technological advancements as a society, while they should make things easier and give us more free time, instead encourage more work being completed and higher goals. Like, I've always thought that to be the case. Like, I don't know. It's another thing. Like, our technology has not saved us any time. Our technology has just increased our workload in the same amount of time. But
I can agree with that. Like in a general sense, I can say, yeah, for sure. Like, the things that we have that are supposed to make our lives easier don't in a lot of ways. I totally agree with that. I'm thinking more just in terms of like, I don't know, like in terms of our lifestyle and scheduling and the tools we have available to give ourselves time. I think we have more of that available. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good sort of back and forth, a good debate about that.
Yeah.
Chenzim said, I was in my 30s when EQ came out and I loved it and I always found time to play. Now I'm in an age where I'm considering whether retirement is a valid option or not. And I plan to play Pantheon often. Although I doubt I'll have stamina to survive the hours and hours of play I used to do in EQ, and I doubt my backside could cope with that either, I hope and feel people will be able to enjoy the game no matter how limited their time is, and not just based on whether they leveled or not. So Kalok said, I actually have more time now than I did in 1999. I was 32 at the time and a single parent. I'm now 53 and fairly stable in my career. Both my kids are grown up and moved out at this point in my life. Philo said, the way EQ was implemented, unless you committed a ton of time to it, you barely scratched the surface of the game. It wasn't even about being the best or the top players. It was just what was required to experience everything it had to offer. The amount of playtime a player can commit to Pantheon won't be an issue like it was in EQ. Zoljan said, as others have mentioned, age is irrelevant with regard to the time available to play. So full circle, how bad do you want it now when you're in your 30s? So I'm assuming that's the age range he's in. You're just hating or jealous of those who have the time to stay up and be an elite player in Pantheon while you don't. If you want it, stay up late, get a little sleep like you used to. It's about desire to play versus life priorities.
Oh man, he hit the nail on the head, man. I've said that player jealousy is what's killing game development and community. Like, people are so jealous of what other people can do that they don't just enjoy what they can do. And he's nail on the head that 90% of people who hate on elites or call us sweaty or don't like stack crunchers or don't like world first, or they want to do it. They feel like their experience is being taken away because someone else is having a better experience. So true. Player jealousy is a plague in this genre and a plague to community. I got to tell you that. Just like, who cares? Like, there's people in our regular life that are ahead of us. There's people in the regular life that's below us. And if that's all you focus on, then you're not going to live your life. It's the same thing in these games.
Well, I'm not going to disagree too hard, but I'm going to say I don't like how he worded it. I feel like there's a bit of judgment there, and I feel like there's a bit of like, I don't know, calling the elite player sort of idea. I have a bit of a issue with the way he worded it. I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. Player jealousy, like I don't, you shouldn't care what anybody else is doing. You should just do your own thing. I get that, but it's about desire to play versus life priorities. Like, I'm never going to choose to play the game over getting a decent night's sleep, right? Like, I mean, that's just who I am. I mean,
yes, you will.
Maybe a couple times. depends on what you say. If you can convince me to do it, I probably will. But but just in general, I just feel like that's a little bit of a slam on people who have lots of commitments in their life. So,
well, there's also a lot of, let's not forget the addicting culture of gaming as well. That's a whole other side topic, but there's people who do get addicted and they sacrifice these things, not because they want to, but because that drug-like induced feeling of success and what's next is just so important that, it puts them in a state where that obsession overrides what they would rather do or have life priorities. But that happens.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that definitely does. And I think that's a separate thing, but you're right. So anyway, I'm glad that we sort of have somewhat differing views on that. That point. Fulton said, I tended to get my characters into their 40s and 50s and start playing alts more. It seemed to me the higher level I got, the more work the game became and the less fun I had. So I just start over and repeat.
That's true.
Yeah,
the beginning for alts is fun.
Yeah. I kind of did the same thing too, because sometimes I like that middle game, the mid game better than the end game. So Nefel. So he said, what has changed for me though is now I care far more about the journey in these games than I do about racing to the end. And I am quite honestly tired of games, MMORPGs, that are all about completing things as fast as possible, joining the rat race to the end game. This isn't an age thing for me. It's not that I've grown up or anything. I'm simply that I'm had over 20 years of playing these games to realize that back in the early 2000s, most of us had the wrong outlook. And that's what led us to the steaming piles of garbage we call MMORPGs today. So Faded Emperor said, I do understand that not everyone can or wants to dedicate 6 hours a day to play a game to remain cutting edge. However, I don't think a game needs to be experienced this way, or that for most cases it should. I think the desire to be cutting edge leads to a great deal of burnout within the community and can lead to a player resenting the game they're playing versus enjoying it. And to get back on topic, I don't think that it is an unfair request for players to want to have shorter play sessions to feel fulfilled coming out of it and feeling like they've experienced something fun and meaningful. However, when it comes to making this reality, the game shouldn't trade in difficulty or challenge to accommodate that goal. Flossie said, when you're a truly competitive player, you'll make time for the game to give you a little edge. If you don't, then the people who do should be farther along than you. We as players should understand that a particular 2-hour session may involve just travel time and setup, but that is still progress and is just as much a part of the process. So I know you agree with that, and I agree with the last part, especially about the travel time. You got to account for that, right? Like that should be part of your planning and your organization. So.
Yeah, like back to the athlete thing, right? Like if you do 100 push-ups a day, you're going to be further along than a guy who does 20.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Shadowbound said, I was able to dedicate more time to playing the game than most, but I still never got to experience a large proportion of it, predominantly the rating aspects, but I didn't care due to the fun I was having. Watt Temper said, all I really care about is experiencing the full extent of the released game before the first expansion. If someone can only play 10 hours a week, they should be content that they won't see the whole game in time before the first expansion. General Reb said, They've spoken of safe campout spots in streams as one example. You can have a difficult time-consuming zone that can still be played in 2 to 3 hour sessions. Log out in the safe spot, try for the next boss or door tomorrow. What I don't want to see is 2-hour play sessions turning into I have to get an item, kill a boss, gain a level, and complete a quest every time because everything is tuned for 2 hours. That would go against the tenets of the game. I think that's a really good point about just sort of adjusting our expectations for what we should be able to accomplish. Siegfried kept it simple. He said, I don't want the casual experience. I'm not interested in having things watered down because I have a busy life. Muscovy said, I can emphatically state that I do not have the same time I did when I was younger, but I'm clamoring for a game that is more similar to EQ than is similar to WoW. I feel I can negotiate my time to 1 play session per week for 3 or 4 hours and scramble for another couple hours on the weekend. 100% I'm casual. 100% I'm looking for a game that would be comparable to EQ. Bolda said, we may have been in our 20s or younger when playing EQ, but don't forget that there would have been people older than us playing as well. They would have been in the same boat as we are now, but back then. Somebody else said, I'm not trying to be world first. I know there's things in the game I may never see, and I'm okay with that. But I will say there needs to be things to do if you only have shorter play times. And what he's talking about is like being able to like farm pelts or bone chips or just logging in to find things like that to do. So, and I agree with that. Anwane said, no, I will not have so much time to spend in the game now that I'm in my 40s. My time for games will be on weekends, but I plan to make the most of my time that I do by doing the things I enjoy and letting the rest just fall into place. Life's a rat race enough. I don't need that in my free time. Server first never impressed me that much. Shocklighter said, I guess there were 3 things that made EverQuest so hard to play in short sessions. Firstly, gaining a level required an amount of experience that wasn't easily gained. 2, most classes couldn't gain experience efficiently while alone. And 3, it was difficult to find a group. So because of those things, people tended to stay in a group for hours once they got it. And especially if that group was doing well. So that's definitely the case.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
If you were in a good group and you knew you had to go to bed at midnight, you didn't care. You stayed up for another 3 hours if that group was willing to. That's a great point.
It's interesting because the psychology of that, right? Because you're like, oh, I might not find this group tomorrow. This is a rare experience. I don't want to waste it. I definitely experienced that as well. And then lastly, our buddy JJ Piedra said,
busted on me last week, exposing me for spelling his name out, right? Like, what do you call that? The pronunciation instead. Yeah, phonetically. Yeah.
Karma's a bitch, man. I got to taste my own medicine. He said commonality can be found in just about anything, regardless of age. So I don't think it matters if you're a child of EQ or someone stepping into Pantheon at a younger age than an EQ veteran. If the player is aware of what Pantheon is and what they're getting into, you might find bigger numbers of players that will probably play the game similarly. So, reading all these responses, I think it sort of there's a pretty clear definition between the 2 player types. And you've got the competitive people and those that don't really play with that sort of mindset. And I think what Streeg's hypothesis was really shown to be accurate through these responses. The competitive players did need the time and commitment to achieve what made them happy. And they're going to do that, right? They're going to put that time in regardless of what their life circumstances are. And then those that approached with a more casual standpoint were content with whatever limited time they had. And again, they're going to be okay with whatever life now allows for. And, in terms of my take, it isn't a question of game design, really. It's a matter of personal organization. The time requirement for EQ for me came from looking for groups, trying to organize things, trying to get things going. And like most 20-somethings, I wasn't an organized person, I didn't need to be because I had the free time available to be a slacker or whatever, right? I could sit in the zone looking for a group for a couple hours. I'd find one, stick with them for a couple more. And if it was a great group, maybe a couple more. Now it's not how it's going to be right now. Everything in my life right now is more organized and scheduled out of necessity. And that's okay. Like think about sport. You've used the sports analogy a few times. Let's go back to it. You could hang out at a gym back in the day, right? Waiting for a pickup game of basketball. And if you got one, great. If you didn't, so what? Whatever, we walked away, you had time on your hands. But if you're a bit older now, is anybody doing this? Is anybody just going down to the gym and just hanging out? Like, I don't think so. So like some people said, don't water down the content because you think your audience can't accommodate it. Let us worry about that. We can organize ourselves. And if it means we can't do the highest tier content, so be it. That's the way it is. Or maybe it's just some challenges, or maybe it just challenges us to organize ourselves better so we can. So I know I've said a lot. What do you think about this, Linus?
No, you're pretty spot on there. I just think, I think it's another one of those times where the players try to blame developers for these things. And this is one that I think you nailed right there, that it's the players need to own. It's not always a game design thing. Like, we have to own what our expectations are, what we set as our expectations, what we force ourselves to do, how obsessive we get. A lot of that's on us. And if Pantheon makes the greatest 2 to 3 hour experience, there's still going to be people who have that 2 to 3 hour experience. It's amazing. And they want an immediate another one. And then they're going to do another 2 to 3 hour experience on top of it. There's no game developer that's going to be able to fix that and say, like, here's how long you can play and that's it. Nobody wants that. And there's going to be people who are better than you. And there's going to be people who are worse than you. And there's going to be people who are ahead of you. And there's going to be people who are behind you. And that's life. There's nothing a game can do that is welcomed by a community to fix that. You just have to, realize that that's how it's going to be. There'll be things you're good at and there'll be things you're bad at. And everyone around you is going to have their own, right?
Yeah. And you have to own your, own what you have and what you can do and make it the best you can for yourself for whatever you need it to be. Right. So yeah, good points. But and that's it for the community discussions.
Let's talk content creator updates and new additions to Pantheon.Plus. Okay, so I'm going to go quick. I always say this. I feel like we get to this section because I want to get to the last section. It's like a unique section. We're doing our mailbox today. So I just kind of I say I'm going to jump through this. So let me read through some of the content that's been added to Pantheon.Plus, content out there from some of the most known creators. So first of all, Nathan Napalm put out a video called Monsters and Creatures. And his description was as follows. He says, let's talk about fantastical creatures I hope to see across the lands of Terminus in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. With a ruined wizard's tower or atop a lonely hill with goblin-infested tunnels, these creatures dwell awaiting a delicious battle with any that dare step foot upon their sacred grounds. From a pyramid filled with haunted crypts to lost cities deep within jungles, they await adventurers brave enough to step into their territory. And he says, join me as I discuss some D&D creatures that I really hope we see adaptations of in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. And it's very heavily inspired from the infinite depths of D&D. Kind of a neat little way to look at it. Like talking about these fantastical creatures and where they could fit into Pantheon. If you like just like monsters and like that fantasy stuff, Nathan puts a really good spin on it. Something neat to check out.
Yeah, I got to watch that one. I haven't watched that one yet.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Basgrim says in his newest video that EverQuest Next is like his ex-girlfriend. When he saw this, I sort of got to laugh, but here's how he kind of defines his video. He says, EverQuest Next broke my heart. And I know for a fact that there are many other people out there who had a similar experience. If you've been paying attention to the slow and painful deterioration of the MMORPG genre over the last several years, you've probably seen some people say things like, they'll never be able to trust another unreleased MMO because they've been burned too many times. And he says he totally gets where they're coming from, but he also thinks that the approach of cynicism is a real threat to the games we actually want to play. So that how at the same time is he still able to risk his time and money on crowdfunding games like Pantheon. So he kind of talks about how he relates it to how he treats his ex-girlfriend. It's kind of an interesting, fun little video. Good theory. It's a little different from a regular Baz video.
I really liked it. Yeah. I thought he's wise beyond his years, man. Like he's younger than both of us, but he's very wise. And I left a comment letting him know that I really enjoyed. I think it's just a good psychologically, sort of good advice, the way he talks about it.
I agree. So for us, we've had a lot, like the last month was crazy for like our content. Like we were doing different videos, we had to plan out. So sort of after a long month of like multi videos per week and a central theme, we kind of a little bit more laid back week for us. And I'm not going to say I didn't love it. Outside of our offerings on this show, the Rewind, we always have the Rewind you can check out. We did recap the developer stream on Pantheon.Plus U. So that was, still a different piece of content. It was really fun. That was a really good episode. Really fun, super good green room. So you guys can check out that and any of the past episodes of Pantheon.Plus U or the Rewind or any of our old videos on Pantheon.Plus. So what's being worked on? So Theric and the team here at Pantheon.Plus know that I am the worst at like having a secret. Like I just... I can't.
Don't trust Minus with your deep dark secrets.
No. Like other people's secrets, I'm good. Like I'm super. Nobody ever hears, but my own secrets, awful. So what's being worked on? So here's what I'm going to say. we're beginning to work on a very big community announcement that we teased last week on the Rewind, and I know a lot of people had comments on that. There's a lot of stuff to be done to formulate exactly what we're looking to accomplish, and also allow community members all across Pantheon to possibly find a home that suits them. I'm keeping it secret, even though this is easily the worst kept secret ever.
Yeah, we had some interesting discussions during the premiere on the Rewind last week. I got to say in chat, there was some people will have you figured out, I think. And,
I don't know. Listen, it's secret. I'm not saying anything else.
Right.
And other news from us, we said this on Pantheon.Plus, so I'm not going to go crazy, but I just want to give a shout out to the community because we did hit 1 year on the 22nd for Pantheon.Plus. So 42 episodes in a year. We also had some special episodes where we did other game developers were on, and we did special content for other games, like in the Pantheon.Plus theme. So it's just really cool. And again, like, I hope you guys realize I'm very genuine about this stuff. Like, I'm not just trying to kiss people's ass, but like, the show doesn't work without you. Like, the show doesn't work without people coming in the green room. It would be the worst show ever. It wouldn't have made it for a year. And it's just really cool. It's been an amazing experience to come up with a different concept, try something new, put our necks out there. We canceled interviews with Minus, which whatever, but and we stopped some of the other like strategies we were doing in videos and really put a lot behind Pantheon.Plus and like your encouragement from the community and the people who were regulars. Like, it just kept it going, and it just kept evolving and getting better and more fun. And then like VR took notice, like halfway through, all of a sudden VR, like Ronick and Joppa and people are jumping in the chat and interacting with the community. And like, there was nothing more that I could have ever asked for than to say, hey, there's this show we're making where, we want your voice to be heard. And not only is your voice heard, they're talking to you. VR is talking to you on the stream. And it's common now. And I'm so grateful for that. Not because of us, but because, again, our whole goal is to have your voice in the community heard on these topics, on development ideas, on dev streams, so that Pantheon could be better. It helps them too. And the fact that they've accepted that and it's come full circle, like, it's just been awesome, man.
I'll tell the listeners what I DM'd you in Discord when to sort of congratulate you. But when I first heard about Pantheon.Plus and I understood what the concept of the show was, I was like, this guy gets it. Like, this guy just understands what MMOs are missing these days and why they're suffering, because people aren't talking to each other. I was like, this is friggin' genius. Like, this show, I'm going to do everything I can to support this show, and I'm going to work to make it a success, because I think it's so vitally important. So, not to kiss your butt too much, but you're a genius and you're awesome and you got this thing going, and it's all on you, man. So congrats.
Yeah, it's just been awesome. And to think like here's another thing. So not only are we talking about VR coming in and people's voices being heard and regulars, like, you're part of this team now. I don't know if you'd be part of this team if it wasn't for the creation of Pantheon.Plus. So it's really important to me because it was a really big goal. It was a big risk. It was different. It takes a crazy setup. It's
a lot of fun though.
It's
a lot of fun. Look forward to it every time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know we're not doing it every week like we used to. It's just, we don't want to kill you with the same topics. We've never done a repeat topic. We don't ever want to do a repeat topic. So that's kind of why it's slowed down a little bit. We don't want to just have a show for the sake of having a show. We want to have a show that's meaningful, right? And it's impactful. So
yeah, definitely.
The only other little piece I'll say is like Drac has the Pantheon wall up and running. You guys will see it on our streams, on Pantheon.Plus streams. You've seen it in the last couple episodes. Really cool. It's a fun thing, and it's actually going to live on our website when the upgrade comes, which is going to be pretty soon, I hope. So like, if you have a cool gaming screenshot or a video, tweet it out with the hashtag Pantheon.Plus, and you may see your tweet on the streams or on the website. It's just kind of a cool way for us to share what we're playing out there and stay connected as a community. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
And that's it for us here at Pantheon.Plus. Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it gets here, I just yell, mail! We're getting sued. I don't think I'm ever going to get used to that being the little bumper there.
It's a little happy jingle right at the end of a long show. It's like the drink of water at the end of a marathon, right? Or it's like such a, I really look forward to, because I can't hear it when we're recording, so I look forward to it when I hear it on the show.
Well, guys, we have gone longer, but I love the mailbox segment. I absolutely love it. I want to do it every week that we can. If you guys submit questions to us, we're going to do it. So submit questions on Twitter. Tag me and Theric on Twitter if you want to have a question for the show. We'll give you a shout out. Or the best way to do it, jump in our Discord, and there's a channel that'll be refreshed weekly that just takes questions for the Rewind. It's the Rewind Questions channel, and you just put whatever you want in there. So let's get into it before we do a 2-hour show. Let's start with JJ Piedra. So I got you, JJ. I got you. So he says, we've seen cool non-playable races in a game such as the Spriggan. Typically, this leads people to wonder if we'll ever play as new races in the future expansion. Do you think Pantheon could benefit from adding new playable races, or do you believe it may cause an oversaturation like we've seen in other games? Do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I'm glad that I get the opportunity to go first here because I think this is a really cool question. I think the way that the lore is set up, this is so ripe for new races to be added down the line, right? We've got the whole collisions. We've got planets colliding into Terminus. And I think it's just a perfect setup. Now, what I don't like, though, is the idea of currently non-playable races suddenly becoming playable, right? I think the world needs these non-playable races like the Spriggan, like he gave as an example, to sort of stay part of the background lore and provide context. If I can suddenly like re-roll a new character and become a Spriggan druid, like it just wouldn't feel right to me. We've seen in other games, but who knows? Maybe down the road we'll see like the 5th expansion in Pantheon will be like Rise of the Ratkin or something like that, right? So you never know what'll happen.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Like when WoW started doing the allied races, it was probably one of the coolest things in the world to me. Like just unlocking them and paying to change my character. Like I went from a Draenei to a Void Elf, and it was like, oh, this is so cool. And it was really cool to like unlock them. And even though there was quite a gating behind it, like fighting through this gating. But I think I agree with you, like especially because of Pantheon's lore. Like if you're gonna add a race, make it impactful. If you just add a race that's running around, you're going to lose a lot of that allure of learning about the race and seeing something new and understanding how they got there. You can do that with a race that's already on the planet, but I think that it'll be less impactful than like a new race that collides or shows up, or maybe there's just been stuff going on for a couple years and you're not sure why and you never get an answer. And then boom, here's this race. Like, yeah. So there's a lot of ways to do it. I think you hit the nail on the head with some of it there, but if you put a ton of races into a game, as long as they have their own story and a reason to be there, you can put as many as you want from me. I think it's great. It adds more character. It gives people more options. I like that.
I think it's a good expansion tool. I agree.
So John Wayne put a bunch of questions in, and John, I'm going to apologize that we couldn't get to all of them just because of how long this show is today, but I picked 3. So we'll kind of go through these a little quicker, but he says, if there is a market auction house, does it need to be accessed in every major city, or would it be better to have separate markets in different regions? I'll go first and say, I know that the theory with Pantheon is that they should be separate. I like that method. Playing WoW, the only Alliance town people really hung out in was Stormwind. It's like even Ironforge died out, and then Darnassus burned to the ground because they're elves, and that was the right thing to do. But I don't know. I think having reasons to keep all the cities alive is important, especially if they do some kind of tax rate system. Or like if one city is being overused, the taxes go up on the auction house where it costs a little bit more to sell something. Maybe you can go to another city where there's not as much and you get a little bit more out of your money. I think little things like that would be smart to kind of push people around the world a little bit.
That was my answer exactly. And I think it fits into the living cities that we talked about a little bit last week. Like you might, if you have regional markets, you're going to maybe more likely find certain items in those regions if they come from that region, right? So it gives you a reason to travel. Like not every city might have what you're looking for. And if an item only drops in like the Silent Plains, maybe you're more likely to find it in a market on that continent. So I think that's the way it should go.
Yeah. Question number 2 is, how important should trade skills be in economy value versus loot drops and farming different mobs? So like it's kind of a combination of like the rarity of items to make things versus loot drops because we can sell them. Like where should the power level come from? Should drops be more powerful than crafted things? It's a big question, but just simply, how would you answer that?
They've said that you're going to be raid bosses are going to drop really rare crafting materials, right? They've talked about that in the past quite a while ago. So I think that's sort of what we're looking at. And I like that.
Yeah, I am, I'm okay with crafting and loot drops being close to similar, like have a close connection. I'm fine with that. It adds value to the crafting game, and it makes crafting exciting, and like getting those rare mats is cool. I would never want crafting to supersede the loot drops. I would rather drops be slightly better than ever to have crafting be better than the loot drops. Personal opinion. I just don't like a game that relies on like finding a crafter if you're not. Like especially games like Blade and Soul, it's like +4, +5, +6, and it's harder to do. And you can break. I've just seen too many bad things when crafting becomes the main focus to end game. I would much rather have it be drops. Again, it could be close, but not the other way around for sure.
Somewhere Nefella's crying right now.
Yeah, sorry,
He's
Nefel.
like, no, but no, I hear what you're saying.
And then his last question: what do you think about some climates or atmospheres that give you a positive buff state in certain areas? What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really considered that. It's sort of a reversal of what we know. Interesting. Maybe if you, I don't know. You know what? I didn't come up with an answer for this one, and I don't really have it off the top of my head. So you go first. I'll just think about it while you're talking.
Yeah. Maybe if your acclamation's at a certain level, you turn something around slightly.
If you get it to 100%, if you get it to like maximum.
Yeah, like you gain a small benefit. Like, so for example, for Frigid, if you walk in, you automatically have that debuff that makes you slower, your regen slower, stuff like that. But maybe if you're 100% acclimated to Frigid, like you actually heal better than normal. Or you move a little faster because you're so acclimated to the environment. I'd be okay with something like that.
I think it would have to be like super hard to achieve, but maybe.
Well, and also if it's multi-tiered, then you could say, well, I'm going to go 100% on this and I'm going to deal with this other one because I'm going to get some benefits here that will help me a little bit from there. Like there's some neat things you could do with that.
I agree.
Disposalist, he's come up a couple times on the show today. He said, can Pantheon satisfy, this is the best because we just kind of read this. Can Pantheon satisfy the the sweaty min-maxer Uber Guild players and the casual fun-loving but still dedicated players? He goes on a bit there, and I joked with him about the sweaty thing again. We talked about it earlier. Can it do both? We did a whole topic on it, so I'm not going to go into crazy detail here because we kind of talked about this already. But yes, it can. It's up to the casual players to not call the sweaty min-maxer Uber Guild players negative names because they want a different experience than you doesn't make them lesser than you. And it's the same exact way the other way around when casual players get all mad for being called casual. Like, just guys, we're all players and we have different things we want, and that's okay.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. And I think we've covered it pretty much in the discussion earlier, so I won't go into it too much either.
Vandrad asks, do you still love me?
Okay. So I talked about it on the show last night. I told Vandrad that I had a poem for him because in response to this question. So here it is. So roses are red, violets are blue. Your question assumes we once loved you.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
Of course, tongue in cheek, we love Vandrad. I thought Vandrad's comment on the show last night was awesome. Actually, I was thinking about it a lot today. I think he nailed it, but we love you.
Vandrad's just super passionate. He wants Pantheon to succeed. And, whereas we focus sometimes more on the positive stuff that we see and amplifying these good things, he gets worried about the negatives. And I think that that's the same value that someone who's positive adds because he does it respectfully. He gets angry, he gets frustrated, but that's passion. It's the same way I get angry or start yelling on these things. And I've done it a couple times tonight. So I think honestly, like when me and Vandrad first met, we probably didn't get along very great. But he's probably one of my favorite people in the community, and I would consider him a friend. And I've bounced ideas off of him. We talk all the time. So yeah, Vandrad, I still love you, buddy. And finally, interesting, completely off topic here. Tech Ninja said, Atari, Sega, or Nintendo, the first console war. I'm going to start on this one if you're okay.
Yeah, you go first. Yeah.
So that is not the first console war. If I had to argue this console war thing, Atari, Sega, Nintendo was not, like Atari and ColecoVision were around, and you could say that was a console war, but Atari destroyed them. Yeah, like Atari won that. And NES destroyed everything. The NES versus the Master System is a joke. That's not a real thing. The NES destroyed everything. I think the first console war was Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis. I think truly that was the start. Sega put out Sonic. They had their Mario, so to speak. You had different games. You had the same game that was different on the consoles. You had the Mortal Kombat Blood Code on Genesis that was not on Super Nintendo. That was really the start of like this weird exclusive. Like the Aladdin game on Sega was amazing. On SNES, it was awful. It's completely different game.
I thought it was the other way around.
No, definitely.
NES was really good and Sega was bad.
No, the SNES one was bad. I'll stand by that. Yeah. And then so there were games that were different completely. And Nintendo, like looking back, I was a Sega guy. I actually was a Genesis kid. I had so many Genesis games. I love Genesis.
Interesting.
Yeah. But looking back, like Super Nintendo, Super Mario World is probably like one of the greatest games ever made. I can still play it right now and know every secret and beat it like in one sitting. I love that game.
That's funny.
But overall, I was a Genesis guy for that first console.
It's funny you talked about the wars in general. I took this question definitely as like, what were you? Were you a Sega, Nintendo, or your Atari, whatever? I was a Nintendo kid, 100%. I've actually got pictures, and one of these days I'll put them on Discord or something like that, of me at like age 12, so circa like 1988, opening an NES control set that I got for my birthday that year. You've never seen a happier kid in your life, right? Like this picture just captures the glee that was that moment. So I was a big time NES kid. And Sega kids were always the kid in school who was trying way too hard to be cool, right? Like these were the kids that you're like, oh my God, like, come on. And Atari kids were living in the past. Now I say that I had an Atari 2600 as well. So, but they were living in the past, kind of sort of like us Pantheon fans a little bit these days. So maybe we're like the Atari people of the MMO
funny.
world.
Yeah.
But I was Nintendo through and through. So
what's funny, man? Like the NES was amazing. The Super Nintendo was pretty good. But I would take it went
downhill.
If I had to say like, the NES is so good. Like the NES top three, easy, top three ever. The NES was so good, but if I had to like pair it up, like Dreamcast, dude, Dreamcast was sick. Like for its time.
I was out of the console situation by the time the Dreamcast came around.
Oh, dude, Dreamcast. Like if I had to say Genesis and Dreamcast versus like, let's say NES and N64, I'd probably take Sega.
Wow. That's big.
Dreamcast is beast, but there you go.
If I had to choose one, it would be a Super Nintendo was definitely the best of the bunch.
That's your favorite ever?
I'd say so.
I hate saying this because I'm not a fan of the company anymore, but the best console was PlayStation 1, the first PlayStation. There was there was like 7 million games. It was probably the best RPG console ever made. The CDs, the first one, you were getting these 3D fighters started coming out like Battle Arena Toshinden, and there were more games for that system than there's games on Steam. I feel like there were so many PlayStation games. But and I'm not a Sony fan anymore. The first console I never bought, the first was PlayStation 4. Never bought a PlayStation 4. That was the first time I didn't buy a mainstream console since Atari. And I'm not going to buy a 5, but I'll buy an Xbox Series X. Like I definitely will. So, I'm not very big in Sony.
No, I hear you. And brand loyalty is a thing, man. Like the only consoles I've bought since the Super Nintendo are Nintendo consoles. Like we had a Wii, we have a Wii U, and I have a Switch, right? So it's just,
it's funny. I buy all those Nintendo consoles and I never play them. Never.
I like my Switch. I enjoyed the Wii U too. Actually, I enjoyed all of them now that I think about it. They all had their good things.
Yeah. Well, there you go. See, Mailbox can be anything, guys. Just get us talking about gaming. We're happy. So,
I love it.
Derek, pretty long episode. Longest episode, I think, ever. 100 an hour and 23 minutes.
That's fine.
It's not horrible. It's like an episode of Pantheon.Plus. So thank you to everybody who's stuck around listening to the end. This is a little bit bigger, but tons of VR content. We can't skip that. And we can't skip talking about the community. It's what we do, right? So
all about.
Lots to squeeze in today. I hope it was exciting the whole time. We try to get through the content at a good pace, but thank you guys for listening. Derek, thank you for another great show. And I guess we'll see everybody next week.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. Be sure to follow Minus and all Pantheon.Plus related content on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube under the name Pantheon.Plus. Also, be sure to follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter. Keep up to date on all Pantheon Rise of the Fallen information on www.Pantheon.Plus, the definitive source for all media of Pantheon. Until next time.